This is Book Talk with Corbin. I'm your host, and just wanted to say to the listeners, as usual, go to my website, booktalkwithcorbin.com, and listen to all my podcasts. And we have with us a very special guest. And most of the listeners I have here in Kentucky, so you guys know the challenge that we have whenever this daggone ice and snow hits Kentucky. All heck breaks out. I mean, it just gets absolutely ridiculous. But fortunately, we were able to connect with Dr. Scott Powell. I'm really excited about doing this. He's a first-time guest, and he's come here to talk about his book, Rediscovering America Today. Let me give you a little background information on him. He's a 30-year entrepreneur. He's founded a couple of companies, senior fellow at Discovery Institute. He's written a number of publications and 3 books. When this man found time to sleep, I don't know. We're not going to ask him today. That's for another show. Absolutely amazing, productive individual. And he's even given some testimony before the U.S. Senate Committee on Foreign Relations. And I'm really, maybe sometime in the future I can talk to him about that, because everybody knows, my major at Berea College was political science. And he has a BA and a master's from University of Chicago and his doctorate at Boston University. And he's here to talk about his third most recent book, Rediscovering America. Dr. Powell, thank you for coming on.
It is a pleasure.
All right. Now, Doc, as I was sort of doing some background research on you and listening to the book, and by the way, we can get this book at your website, rediscoveringamerica.net. Is that correct?
The easier way to get the book is to type in my name and the title on a search. That'll take you right into the first listing that will come up is the Amazon listing. Click on that. You'll be taken right to the Amazon page. And let me tell your listeners that pre-ordering the book really helps, because the COVID supply chain constraints are such that print runs are much smaller than they have been generally for authors. So every order that comes in pre-sale will drive 5 to 6 times more books being printed for the second edition. The first edition is already established, but the second edition can really benefit from orders that come in now before the book is released. And so every book you buy means that 5 or 6 more books will be available for libraries and just for consumers. And I mean, right now it's ranked it's the number 1 new release in the history genre. That doesn't translate into a bestseller, but it comes reasonably close. So we need books. So thanks for helping out.
Yeah. Hey, we're definitely going to order some. And I'm going to urge my listeners, Facebook page and website, to order some.
It's a great story.
And you mentioned it was, it's number 1 in the history genre. So I was doing some research on it. Can you talk to us about why this is a rather unique history book?
Most history is written in a linear fashion. It's the who, what, when, and where. And most historians don't do much with the whys. They just report the facts. And of course, many histories, if it's a comprehensive history of a country like America, that's one thick tome. I mean, Ron Chernow writes, 1,000-page books on, Alexander Hamilton, one guy. Mm-hmm. So what I sought to do, I really felt that Americans underappreciated their heritage. And over the years, I had written columns on the holidays. And then I had readers that said, I always learn a lot from your columns. You need to put them all together in a book. I deferred that. But late in 2019, I sort of answered the call. Of course, I didn't know what we were in for, but it's an extraordinarily timely book, with all the attacks on our heritage, tearing down statues and monuments.
Yes.
It's like people don't know their history. We have an incredible history. We're not a perfect nation, but it's a great story. And there's a lot of backstories within the book too. And I can share a few of those with you.
When you said, this book has come out at a great time, I completely agree with you, because here in Louisville, we had several controversies about wanted to take down statues and things of that nature, statues that had been up for decades,
Right.
decades. And all of a sudden, these statues are offensive and they're racist. And at the University of Louisville, I used to do some research there, and I never realized that this statue I kept walking by every day was racist. I mean, he never said anything to me, Then later on, I find out through a minister who did some research on it that this statue that's supposed to be racist was in fact set up as a memorial to deceased soldiers, and these soldiers were like almost begging for medical help and all. Confederate soldiers, and the people were saying, "Yeah, we'll help you." So it really had nothing to do with racism at all. It was just compassion. But I did read some here in your book about Rediscovering America. It's almost like every chapter can be read by itself. Does that make any sense?
Yes. Let me just share with your listeners. I recognize that everyone's busy and big, thick books. A lot of people just say, well, I don't really have time for that. So I decided to write a succinct book. And what I did in the book is focus on the key figures and the key transitions in our country. From the founding, of course, you have to start at the beginning. But then the story of Columbus, the story of July 4th, the 4th of July Declaration, the Revolutionary War, the Constitution. And then the next big important time was the Civil War. So I focused on Lincoln and the emancipation of slavery, but we didn't realize the vision of July 4th, which was one in which people were equal in value, that they were free to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. That was a great vision that the founders had, but it wasn't realized. When the Constitution was formed, it was formed with the southern states, and they had institutionalized, their agricultural economy around slave labor.
Yes.
And they knew they couldn't solve that problem then. And there was a lot of confidence that there was enough anti-slavery sentiment amongst Southern leaders that they would deal with the problem in their own way. They did not. We had a war over it. But even after the war, we had, the Black Code and then the Jim Crow well into the 20th century, where we were, and that was codified in an 1896 Supreme Court decision, Plessy versus Ferguson, where people were equal, but they were separate. So we have the Supreme Court basically legitimizing segregation. That carried over into the 20th century until God raised up Martin Luther King. And he spent 15 years of his life in the civil rights movement. And we know the result. It was powerful. It was powerful. And in some ways, Martin Luther King established the absolute standard, the ideal standard of race relations. And that would be a society in which people would not be judged by the color of their skin, but rather the content of their character.
And
that's a very noble vision.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
That was, of course, the famous "I Have a Dream" speech. But in that same speech, Martin Luther King said to the crowd that we have come here to collect on a promissory note. What was that promissory note? That promissory note was the words in the Declaration of Independence. And we now, in modern times, we have to collect on a promissory note, and that's the Constitution. So much of what's been going on in our country in the last few years is really unconstitutional. We are violating our own Constitution, and we're inviting more problems when we deviate, from the law that protects all of us.
Right. This is Book Talk with Corbin. I'm your host. Check out my website, booktalkwithcorbin.com. We're speaking today with Dr. Scott Powell, and he's talking about his book, Rediscovering America Today. You can get this book, and please do buy a copy at Amazon.com. And as he stated, too, you can go to a Google, Yahoo search, put in his name and the name of the book, and other ways you can get the book will pop up. And I want to emphasize to the listeners, it's very important we get this book so that he can get this message out to more and more readers. It's very important we get behind this book.
Well, it's Paul Revere time now, and admittedly, all affluent societies run into the same problems that people they take life for granted, everything about them for granted, and they forget that to arrive at where we've been, there was a lot of struggle. That freedom is not free, actually. It was fought for. And now we're living in times where we're seeing our freedom stripped away from us.
Yes.
And we've got to fight for our freedom. We've got to preserve freedom. We got to take back our government, and we got to recognize that there may be limited time. It's Paul Revere time. We need to take action because we, the people, we are a country that's based on an arrangement between government and people where the people are in charge. We, the people,
right.
Government of the people, by the people, for the people. The vast majority of Americans are very happy with the Constitution. It's that very vocal minority that's tearing down the statues and wanting to restructure and transform our country. Right,
absolutely. Dr. Powell, we're gonna conclude on that. That's a great way to conclude. Again, I want to say to folks, this is Dr. Scott Powell. We're talking about his book, Rediscovering America, today. Please get you a copy. Dr. Powell, hope we can bring you back sometime and focus on some specific issues, because you said, hey, we're in a situation that's pretty delicate right now. As you said, it's like a Paul Revere time, and we have some of our constitutional rights being stripped from us, or there are attempts to be stripped from us. And I hope that we can bring you back where you can talk about that. I hope you.
I'd be happy to. I'll make time. I'll be happy. Just let me know.
I will, Doctor. Thank you so much.